heard this was an objection, I said to myself, what next are they going to find? I think it's absurd, and I think that we need to consider now the wishes of the vast majority of our citizens rather than those of a chosen few. I think it's time this resort move forward. Thank you.
Marty Gales.
Hi, my name is Marty Gales. I'm a full-time resident of Big Indian. I first came to the Catskills only 22 years ago, so relatively new. I've watched my hamlet shrink. I believe it's dying. We once had 4 thriving businesses: Morris Market, the Valdezera Restaurant, Big Indian Service Station, and the Wayside Cottages. The restaurant and the market are closed. Cottages are rarely filled. The gas station no longer sells gas or services cars. As a retired school teacher, I have the luxury of doing a lot of volunteer work. I chair Shandaken Parks and Rec Board. I run the Big Indian Beautification Committee. I serve as treasurer of the Big Indian Fire Company Auxiliary. I'm secretary of the Fleischman's Pine Hill Rotary. All of those activities are extremely rewarding, and all of them are struggling for resources, and most important, for volunteers. This resort could change this. It could bring hundreds of workers for the build-up, workers who will support our B&Bs and small motels that are empty Monday to Thursday. Once functioning, the resort will offer good-paying jobs right here. The Bel Air Resort is not an assault on the beautiful environment that we all cherish. It will succeed because of that environment. It has downsized and addressed every concern because it is dedicated to preserving and protecting the unique environment that we have here. I urge you to adopt the interpretation of what a lodge is as requested by the planning board and make our home a reality.
Cathy Nolan.
Good evening. My name is Cathy Nolan, and I'm a resident of Phoenicia and chair of the Catskill Heritage Alliance. I ask that you determine that the 15 detached units in the Wild Acres portion of the resort proposed by Crossroads Ventures be multiple dwellings, and as such are structures not permitted in residential zones under the Shandaken zoning code. Crossroads Ventures' application for special permit and site plan describes the 15 detached structures containing 163 dwelling units as follows.
Kathy, stop now. That isn't, we're not,
This is public comment period, right?
I realize that. But
So I think that in order for my comments to be understood, I need to describe what the application says.
To the interpretation.
This is pertaining to the interpretation.
We're not asked to limit numbers.
Chairman, I believe you're out of order to correct me on what I'm offering to the board as my comment.
I agree.
All right, let's do it with this.
The application says that the detached lodging units, marketed as fractional share and timeshare units, will come online over the following 5 years, that is, after the hotel is built, as dictated via pre-sales. Each of these structures is proposed to have its own water and plumbing, its own kitchen and bathroom, its own driveway and parking lot, and its own landscaping and distinct views. Many of the structures are located more than a half mile from the proposed Wild Acres Hotel, and a few of them are located in a different county. Fractional share and timeshare units, as these names imply, are owned by the individuals who live in those units, and not by a nearby hotel or resort, even if it is located on the same property. The nature of each of these 15 building structures is clearly to serve as an apartment or condo, that is, a home to the owners of the units. The nature of the buildings themselves reveals that they do not fall into any existing zoning category other than multiple family dwellings, nor are they substantially similar to any existing zoning category except multifamily dwellings. However, Shandaken zoning code does very clearly define condominium as, quote, individual ownership of a dwelling unit within a multiple dwelling, exclusive of the land underlying such structure, that is, wherever it's located, which on its face indicates that condominiums are found in multiple dwellings. In fact, this referral to the ZBA comes from the court's decision based on previous case law generated in Shandaken in the Woodland Valley case, that the ZBA is the appropriate body to evaluate whether the lodges and duplexes proposed by Crossroad Ventures can be authorized because they are similar to a use already allowed, such as a hotel or motel or lodge, or whether they are similar to something that is prohibited, multifamily dwellings. How would condominiums and structures built like freestanding homes with their own kitchens, water supply, bathrooms, plumbing, owned by individuals or multiple individuals, be substantially similar to a motel or hotel?
Time's up.
It is the differences that are obvious and important.
No.
Different.
Your 3
Everybody
minutes
else
is
got
up.
3 minutes?
Nobody indicated to me that there was a time limit.
But
But I mean, how am I supposed to know when my time's up? May I say in conclusion? This came to you because
Quiet, please, come on.
Could you have the timekeeper sit where we get an indication of time remaining if it's going to be a strict time limit? I didn't understand
It
that.
was announced at the beginning of the meeting.
That we would be asked to limit our comments. And Mr. Johnson's comments took up a lot of my time.
beginning.
So, the zoning officer and the planning board are not allowed to make the determinations they made that sent this on. That's why it came back to you. And all you were asked to do is look in the zoning code and see where these structures fit. That's simple. That's the kind of review that the zoning board of appeals always does, and all the rest is commentary. Thank you.
Joanne Steele?
Yes. My name's Joanne Steele, and I live in the town of Esopus, and I'm representing the Mid-Hudson Sierra Club. The Mid-Hudson Club has about 2,200 members, half of which are right here in our gorgeous Ulster County where I live.
I'm sorry,
My comment,
is it Mid-Hudson Theater Club?
Mid-Hudson Sierra Club. Although I'll bet there is a Mid-Hudson Theater Club. In any case, the issue is zoning applies to everybody, not just some development that people wish and hope, and I would hope too, to bring good things, jobs, business to the community. However, let's say I own a house and a couple acres, down the road, wherever, and I somehow get the money up to put in some of those cute little cottages they have for sale at the Amish make and others do. Put them on my property and put those environmental toilet facilities in them and rent them out cheap, to people. Say I put in, I don't know, 4, 5, depending on the money I have. And in less than a year, they'll all be paid for. Now, then I might want to sell them on my property, as this development wants to do, and therefore, of course, I could do. And I don't know, what do you think? 20 grand a piece? I don't know. The point is, zoning applies to everyone, all of us, not just a few special people and to meet our hopes and dreams. Sierra Club is not against development, but it's against dangerous, loose overdevelopment and encroachment and all those things that are in the secret law. And I certainly care about the people of Shandaken, and hope that, you know, things can work out where the development can be appropriate for us and not take all the business away from us, and that it'll be helpful. But it is overdevelopment at this point. And thank you very much, all of you.
Joan Lawrence Bauer.
Hi, my name is Joan Lawrence Bauer. I wear a lot of hats in the community and have for many years. But I'm here tonight as a resident. I'm here tonight as someone who has lived in Oliveria for the last 30 years, and as someone who grew up in Margaretville, so has spent my entire life here. I am the daughter of the first code enforcement officer in Margaretville, the one person who back in the late 70s and early 80s realized that our community needed zoning laws and planning laws. I have incredible respect, having watched my father develop and then help lead and interpret and move those laws to the benefit of the community. Here in Shandaken, my husband was a longtime member of the planning board. I have incredible respect for the role of these organizations. When this project was first proposed, I had no opinion on it. Within 1 week of its proposal, people were knocking on my door asking me to lead the way to get this done. And I said, well, I don't know anything about it, so I think I'm just going to step back and watch. And then within another week, another group of people said, we're forming a group to stop this, and we want you to lead the group to stop it. And I said, I don't know anything about it. We need to stop and think and look. And I've spent the better part of 2 decades now watching it. The fact of the matter is that every I has been dotted and every T has been crossed except this tiny little one right here. And you are being asked tonight to make an interpretation of a word. It is your job to interpret our laws. That is what you are here to do. I would say that I went on vacation recently. I stayed in one of these units. I didn't move in. I didn't permanently stay there. I didn't set up a home for my family. It had a kitchen. It had all kinds of facilities, a bathroom. It had a dishwasher. It was a great week. I spent my week on vacation at the resort, and then I came home. And that is what people will do when these are built here. So tonight, respectfully, I ask you to honor the request from the planning board and to determine that this is a lodge and that this is what was intended to be part of a resort community that we need here. Thank you.
Tony Lanza.
My name is Tony Lanza. I'm the former superintendent of Bel Air Mountain for 14 years. I had the honor of being its superintendent, and I also had the honor of crafting the state side of the unit management plan. The unit management plan, it's 17 years since this resort started. But it's 30 years since 1986, since there was an amendment to the New York State Constitution where the Senate and the Assembly and the people of New York wanted to increase the size of Bel Air Mountain to 25 miles of trails. It's never happened. This resort is the only opportunity to give to the people of New York what they requested 30 years ago. Now, I've had a great deal of experience in the ski business. I've been to many, many resorts. These units are an integral part of a product line of a complete resort. It would be foolish for the owner of the resort to turn these into multiple family units and into condos, because it's been proven in resort after resort throughout this country that if I own a condo and I live in New York and it's 2 hours away or 4 hours away in Vermont and it's going to rain this weekend, I'm not coming up. So therefore we don't have heads in beds. Heads in beds mean no money at our resort and no money in our community. So throughout the entire industry, this paradigm of business is being used. Timeshare, fractional ownership, and then an option with a hotel room. It's part of the package. You can't open up a resort and give people just one option. They have to have options. You only have to go as far as Wyndham to see a successful model that is proposed here tonight in operation and with an enormous amount of success, with an enormous amount of return to its local community. As far as character goes and scale, this project isn't even 1/10 of the size of the units just over the mountain at Wyndham. And one of the great things about this project is this is not setting a precedent for the future. This is it. This is our one shot. So I urge tonight to take the planning board suggestion and move ahead. Thank you.
Harry Jameson.
Good evening. My name is Harry Jameson. I'm 50. Ooh. I need some help here. I've been a resident of Shandaken for 52 years. I've been in business in Phoenicia for 37. I grew up in Shandaken in an economic depression. Minimum wage jobs were about all that was available. I worked at Bel Air. I worked on Share 1, Share 4, worked in the parking lot. Worked for a farmer, did a little roofing and a little bit of sod. 1972, I graduated on Fiora, and I was able to get a job in a factory working a minimum wage job, production line. And I realized that that wasn't going to get me anywhere, so just like 95% of the people I graduated with, I left. And I joined the Navy, I got an education, I came back as an engineer, and I wanted to start my own business, so I did. Growing up in Shandaken was not easy then, and it is not easy now. We constantly look for new ways to establish economy around here. Turn of the century, teens, 20s, the Catskills were America's first vacation land. Pine Hill at that point provided 2,200 available lodgings. The Grand Hotel stood not far from where the Bel Air Resort project is being proposed. And unfortunately, America went elsewhere, and we went into the state of economic decline that we are now. For the last 15 years, I have watched and hoped, as a businessman and as a resident of this town, that this project would happen. I've watched a generation of jobs that didn't happen. I've watched millions of dollars of construction development that provided other jobs not happen. I've watched millions of dollars of economic development and spin-off that we all could have benefited from not happen. I also look at the fact that the visionary who proposed this project initially was also the same gentleman who proposed the Catskill Corners. And ironically, the same opposition, the same people, point people, who are opposing the Bel Air Resort project also opposed that project and did everything they could to stop it. What is now the Emerson? What is now an asset to our community? What is now an economic engine? What is now a place where people who I went to high school with work? Please approve the interpretation for the planning board. Let's move on. We can't just stay here and do what we do. Thank you.
Jack Schoonmaker.
Mr. Chairman, Board, I'm Jack Schoonmaker, Project Manager for Crossroad Ventures, Bel Air Resort. I have over 35 years of experience in the architectural field as a designer, draftsman, code interpreter, construction manager, project manager, and documentation advisor. I've been involved with this project now for 8 years. And I can honestly tell you that these are not apartments. These are not condominiums. These are detached lodging units, an integral part of the resort, part of the hotel management. They will be owned and operated by the hotel. There will be fractional interest and timeshares, but they are only buying time at the resort, not the units, and therefore are not declared as family dwelling units. We ask that you continue to do your job and to accept the interpretation that was put before you by the planning board. Thank you very much.
I can't really read the first name, but the last name is McCloy.
Thank you. My name is John McCloy. I'm a resident of Big Indian. I live on a property that's been in my wife's family for 6 continual generations. So we're here for a long time. When this project started, Bill Clinton was still president. 9/11 had never happened. There wasn't a 4 million square foot World Trade Center even contemplated at the time. The world has moved and evolved. This project makes us look like jerks. If we can't figure out a little resort in the Catskills in 16 years, what's going to allow any other developer, any other business to even take an interest in what we're doing here if they think they're going to get stuck like this? The developers that propose this are area residents. Nobody else for financial gain would have spent 16 years doing this. We all know what it's like dealing with the DEC and the DEP. Both of them have given their blessing to this project. So has the County of Ulster, so has the Delaware County. It all comes down to you guys. Puts you in a bad position, but that's your lot in life right now. I urge you to accept the interpretation of the planning board and let this project move forward. Thank you.
Tom Ronaldo.
Good evening. I'm a resident of Nisha. My concerns do not focus on, for purposes of tonight and in general, on the environmental controversies that have been aired endlessly. I mean, there are real arguments to be made there. People have studied it, people have studied it. My concerns are economic, and in that sense, I share a starting point for considering this matter that many people here have, which is the impact on Shandaken, the economic impact on Shandaken, the impact on our way of life and our ability to thrive, and etc. There's a lot of desperation about jobs. It's clear. There's some national things that have happened over the last few decades that have affected the Catskills, large forces. Those are constantly changing. It's not a static picture. But, so there are reasons why people, I understand, are in favor of moving forward with the resort. This is not about whether or not one is pro or anti-resort. It's about doing this, considering this matter from a position of the well-being of our town and the residents of our town. And that's why we have zoning laws, and that's why we have variances, and that's why there are trade-offs, and decisions made, and negotiations that take place when something does not quite fit the way the plan had previously been envisioned about how we're going to develop our town. Nothing this large has happened to Shandaken. This is going to dwarf everything. If we're off a little bit in our projection, 5 to 10%, the impact on this town can be massive. It can be massive in a positive way. It can be massive in a negative way. When they started talking about this, there wasn't something called Airbnb. There was talk about all the housing units that were available that the workers who were staying here for 10 years building could stay in, and no one was talking about all those units being rented out now to Airbnb. That's gonna put a lot of pressure on the housing stock, it's gonna put a lot of pressure on rents, it's gonna put a lot of pressure on rentals that are gonna keep young people from being able to afford to live here, because workers are gonna be taking up those units if there aren't people staying at Airbnb. There's a downside as well as an upside to this thing. And this is your job and the planning board's job is to negotiate on behalf of this town. The leverage that you have is the law. This is a major corporation involved, or there will be major corporations ultimately buying this. If there's a request for, if something's not in line, that's a basis for negotiating. It's our leverage. I'm concerned that that we haven't used the leverage that Shandaken has had. We didn't get any affordable housing built into this thing. There's going to be workers moving in. There's still an opportunity for leverage. This is your opportunity for leverage, not by doing something illegal, but by using the law as it's written to say, we need to get back to the bargaining table and work out a better deal.
Thank you.
Janet Lugowitz?
I also am a resident of Phoenicia. I don't have a lot to say. Just that I think it's naive to believe that people who come to the resort will bring a lot of business to the surrounding, surrounding communities. I've stayed at resorts, sometimes as a babysitter for professionals when I was younger. I'd go along with their families, and they didn't use the communities that were nearby. They went to the resort and stayed there and went to the restaurants at the resort, used the facilities that were there, the pools that were there, the gyms that were there, the shops